English or Spanish. Welcome.
Muchas gracias, buenos días a todas y a todos. Es un placer para nosotros desde el PNUMA, el Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Medio Ambiente, de hacer estas palabras de apertura. Bueno, voy a ser corta, no voy a tomar mucho de su tiempo porque el más interesante va a ser el panel que va bien a seguir. Bueno, entonces quería agradecerles su presencia y también su compromiso y destacar la importancia del sector de los edificios y de la construcción para el trabajo del PNUMA. El sector es responsable alrededor del 37% de las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero relacionadas con la energía y de más de 34% de la demanda energética mundial. El sector es un sector de gran impacto.
The sector is a sector of great impact when we're talking about the planet crisis regarding the issues of biodiversity, and on the other hand, we've had certain issues with change and with the improvement in processes and procedures, and this is a key sector for the different sectors. And to have access and to have inefficient and unhealthy areas that repercuts in the state of the evidence. And the population of Latin America and the Caribbean will continue growing. This means that the housing demands is increasing considerably. And in terms of urbanizations with populations concentrated along the coast with meteorological phenomena that are more frequent, and it's part of this. This is making the transformation of the sector to become vital for the inhabitants in the regions. This poses great important challenges, but also challenges internal in the creation of works and innovations. PNUMA is working with buildings and constructions for over 15 years, and it's proud of being the office for the World Secretariat for Construction Buildings founded in the Conference of the Parties 2021 to facilitate a dialogue between the sectors of constructions and its essential role for the transition to our world, and it has a net zero balance, and to the global ABC for its, and it's working and promoting of common languages in the sectors. And we have seen the interested parties to elevate the interests of the different areas for the different world priorities. In line with the Paris Agreement, the global ABC has created a roadmap for the resilience of different buildings in 3 regions: Africa, Asia, and our region of Latin America and the Caribbean. We are proud to see that we are able in more than 30 ports, among them in our region, Colombia. And we are working for the harmonizations and the resilience in the construction segment. And part of the actions that we are trying to contribute within this context, we are making a call to action to all the countries in the region that are using those roadmaps to define their national strategies for decarbonization and resilience for the sectors of edification and construction. My second point will be to highlight the importance of a profound multi-level collaboration, especially with the objective of the advances of these areas of the beauty's breakthrough, co-led by the governments of France and Morocco under the coordination of the Global ABC, sponsored by PNUMA. And our most sincerest thanks to the Ministry of the Ministry of Housing from the Kingdom of Morocco for their leadership and for co-directing the initiative. The deep collaboration is fundamental to transform this sector, and we need the countries to support the beauty breakthrough. And we could see this that is going to become a normality in 2030. So far, 20 countries have joined us for the Buildings Breakthrough, and 15 initiatives have announced their support. And the initiative will be officially launched at COP28, and that will happen now in November, December, and it's going to be done by in COP in the World Congress for the Climate, working with the governments of France, Paris, and these pioneer events. It's gonna be there, and this is the value chain for the benefits and the value chain for the construction buildings, and to work with the decarbonization and resilience for those resources. And as part of the Paris agreements, we make a call to action and an invitation to all the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean to join us in the initiative, and for them to participate in the global forum that will be celebrated on the days 7 and 8 of March in Paris. Thank you very much for the commitment, and we're going to keep on working with the benefits for constructions and all of the necessary skills. And I also welcome you in Panama. I am based here in Panama, and so you can continue, so you keep on enjoying this excellent panel that is to follow. Thank you very much. Check. Yeah. Mic check. 1, 2, 3. Mic check. Inglés. ¿No me escuchas en inglés? Canal en inglés. Thank you very much, Beatrice. As it was mentioned, I am going to switch to Spanish. Nada, no me escuchas nada.
Sustainable Building Materials Work Group for the Global ABC. We've been working on this for a while, and we're going to give today a very brief summary of what the building breakthrough.
Probando. 1, 2, 3, inglés. Aquí está el técnico, ellos están trasteando algo acá, fíjate para ver si no sé eso.
Very well. So, let's give us a little bit of context first here. Sorry. Okay. First of all, important to know that globally, our building stock at a global level is only 50% of what we will need by 2060. And in terms of our infrastructure, our current infrastructure...
Hola, probando, 1, 2, 3, probando, inglés.
So obviously, in this sense, it's pretty easy to see
No,
how
inglés.
business
Probando.
where we need
Nada.
to be as a sector is not going to cut it for us. The building
Estoy en el canal de inglés.
either the building or the
Ella está probando el canal de inglés porque el canal de inglés es el que no está funcionando.
in our built environment as a whole towards the goals we need to have.
Nada, todavía.
From a cost-benefit perspective,
Hola, inglés. ¿Ahora sí? Ok, entonces, se va y viene. No sé, ya ahí no te puedo ayudar. Nada más que puedo hablar en cosas, pero no puedo hacer más nada. Ya, ahora sí, ok. Ahí está, el señor está...
already been established. Furthermore, attacking the built-in
Probando, inglés, probando.
also represents enormous co-benefits that are important to take into account in terms of social impact, health and well-being, resilience, and especially in highly impacted regions like Latin America and the Caribbean. Keeping in note that 13 of the 50 most impacted countries by climate change are in Latin America and the Caribbean. Looking at a bit more of a global scope, we have data from the end of 2022 that shows us some of the following information in terms of nationally determined commitments and so on. we know that 77% of NDCs include greenhouse gas reduction targets, and 96% include sector-specific mitigation targets and other measures. Some of these sector-specific targets are within the building sector. That varies, obviously. As well, once again, at the closing of 2022, we have that 86% of NDCs include an adaptation component, many with improved detail and sectoral coverage. Once again, lots of that sectoral coverage is in the building sector, but not as much as we'd like to see. And finally, 53% of the NDCs include estimates of climate finance requirements, which is, as we all know, is becoming one of the key habilitators in terms of accelerating the transformation that we need. Side note there is important to note as well that some of the most used internationally recognized building certification programs like LEED and EDGE have increased dramatically their focus on embodied carbon as well. So these are things that we're seeing moving forward. Once again, not at the pace that we need, but we are moving forward. Okay, just some general information here as well in terms of what the Global ABC does and how it works around these areas. There are obviously some flagship products and resources. There are global and regional roadmaps. Important to point out that of the 3 regional roadmaps that exist, there is one for Latin America. The other 2 are from Africa and Asia. And as a result of these efforts, there's also obviously like a cascade effect where we're seeing that there are national roadmaps and even local or municipal roadmaps or regional roadmaps being developed as well. This was founded at COP21, which is hosted obviously by the United Nations Environmental Program with 280 members, including 39 countries. The Global ABC for Buildings and Construction is the leading global platform for all building stakeholders committed to a common vision, a zero-emission, efficient, and resilient buildings and construction sector. Okay, so we can see there obviously some of the different initiatives there are. There's advocacy as well and different things moving on. I'll make a little announcement there is that obviously more members are always welcome. Okay, in terms of the flagship product, one of which is the roadmaps that I mentioned, important to note that they're developed as a framework and a process. The roadmap is a publication that represents a comprehensive approach to emissions reductions from the built environment along the full life cycle, with aspirational short and medium term and longer term targets, goals aligned with the MPGCA human settlements pathways and timelines towards achieving zero emission, efficient and resilient buildings and construction between 2020 and 2050. Now, this was developed in partnership with the International Energy Agency, IEA, as you probably know it better. The roadmaps are a product of a highly consultative process involving more than 700 experts who engaged in its development process, refining them each time with more data and examples from the regions. They bring a common vision and language for the building and construction sector's highly fragmented value chain and support the transition towards the decarbonization of the sector. So there you can just get a bit of an idea of what the 8 categories are and how these are developed. In terms of the roadmaps, as I mentioned, these have proposed a kind of cascade effect. So this methodology and process, which is a cascade effect, trickles down to sub-regional, national, and sub-national levels, leaping forward towards implementation in over 30 countries today. Just an example of this from where I am, in Costa Rica, the Green Building Councils have worked with a city cluster of 4 municipalities to develop their individual roadmaps, and several other countries are doing similar, more locally contextualized initiatives in terms of roadmaps and so on and so forth. We're bringing high-level ambition from national commitments to locally implemented, once again, initiatives and goals where, let's say, the rubber meets the road at the municipal level. Okay, in terms of international collaboration, we can see that the Glasgow Breakthroughs was launched at COP26 with 45 world leaders. The Breakthrough Agenda is a commitment initially with those 45 countries, which constitute over 70% of the global GDP, to make clean technology solutions the most affordable, accessible, and attractive option in each emitting sector by the end of this decade. Significant transformation of major sectors is required over the next few years. We can see some of those sectors here in the slide. Obviously, collaboration is vital in order to leapfrog the implementation process that will facilitate replication and scaling at the rate that is needed. This is important because we're seeing through these efforts, we can see what initiatives and methodologies work, which ones have the greatest impact, and which ones in that sense deserve or should be replicated and escalated. At the same time, we can also see which initiatives are not giving the impact that was desired or that we were hoping for, and we can see what has to be adjusted there or reevaluated so that we're actually investing our resources, both time, et cetera, and funds and the following, so that the impact is going where we need it to go. Okay, there is no time, obviously there's a time constraint issue here, so there is no time to be wasting on things that aren't working, aren't creating the impact that we need. So this is important in terms of in terms of the, let's say, peer-to-peer learning experience that there is for replication through initiatives like the Global ABC and the Buildings Breakthrough. Okay. Sorry, I apologize for the pauses. I'm translating to Spanish and English as I go along here, so bear with me. Here we have the importance of international collaboration, obviously. Despite the building sector being a heavyweight for climate action, a buildings breakthrough was not part of the breakthrough agenda. At COP27, France and the Morocco, co-leading countries in collaboration with UNEP, issued an official call to all countries to join a buildings breakthrough to accelerate the transition to sustainable buildings for everyone, everywhere. As you can see there, it says, we governments gathered under the banner of the buildings breakthrough will collectively act to achieve worldwide net zero emission and resilient buildings are the new normal by 2030. Obviously not too much time there, so the time to act is now. Important to highlight here as well, obviously it's important for any local actions to be regionally relevant, first of all, because we do have a lot of solutions out there. There's lots of people working in silos, lots of different initiatives that sound like the same thing, but they are not. So when we are looking for these tools to implement in our local communities or in our countries, it is important to make sure that it is locally, let's say, contextualized or regionally relevant. We need tools that can be adapted to take into account the local reality, but at the same time are aligned with regional, national, and global goals. This is where the tricky part comes in, but there are several good tools out there, and the idea is to make those known to others and make them accessible to accelerate this transformation, as I've mentioned. What we're looking for basically is local action with global impact, and that all of the initiatives are, let's say, aligned along the way. Okay? Where are we now exactly? As we mentioned, it was launched a little while ago. To date, we have 25 countries signed up to the Buildings Breakthrough. You may notice something that I know I noticed. No Latin American countries up there. So given that we are in the Latin American and Caribbean Climate Week, I think it's important to note that it would be great to see some Latin American countries up there. So I think there is a general call for all of us to collectively leverage our networks and make sure that we are lobbying and supporting our local governments wherever we are to make sure that we do get some Latin American representation along the lines of the Buildings Breakthrough. It is important for this to be a global effort and for hopefully all regions to be well represented there, and that we can all benefit from learning from each other and implementing policy that will make the transformation that we need. The official launch will be at COP28, and the idea is to have more than 25 countries enlisted by then. Finally, just to give you a bit of an idea of where the Buildings Breakthrough is heading, what the plans are, you can see a bit of a timeline there. Following our many engagements in various international events and regular consultations with countries, today, as I mentioned, the Building Breakthrough has 25 countries and 15 initiatives as members. Important to note there's already 15 initiatives registered there along with the 25 member countries. The Buildings Breakthrough is planning for an ambitious launch at COP28 on the 6th of December with the hope of gathering a maximum of government and maximizing the impact in the sector. This will be a milestone ahead of the Buildings, of the Buildings and Climate Forum, a first of its kind event that will gather world ministers in charge of buildings and construction and significant stakeholders from the whole value chain, which will be held in Paris in March 2024. For those of you who want to write that down on your calendars there. So the final event you can see there at the far right is the Buildings Forum, which is, once again, March 2024 in Paris. So I urge all of you to take into account the Buildings Breakthrough. If you want more information, please go to the Global ABC site. There's plenty of information there. And without further ado, in order to make sure we make the most of our time, I'm going to start, invite our panelists to come to the stage. Let me present them to you one by one. First of all, we have Liliana Campos, who is the head of projects for GIZ Mexico. Liliana, por favor. Also, we have Carolina Dantas, who is the project coordinator for Latin America and the Caribbean for the Buildings and Woodworkers International, known as BWI. We also have Pamela Castellan, CEO of Guatemala Green Building Council, and also the chair of the World GBC, it's America's Regionals Network. As well, Mr. Manuel Lascarro, Executive Committee Member, Concrete Sustainability Council, Director General of FIHP and PROSEMCO. And finally, we have our local panelist as well, Marta Raquel Bernal, Coordinator of the Special Projects of the National Energy Secretariat here in Panama. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being part of our panel. I have a few questions. Just so you know, the way this is structured, we're going to have some specific questions for each one of our panelists, and then time permitting, at the end, we will have a round of open questions for the audience. So let's see, we're going to start off with, our first question is for Marta Raquel Bernal, and it is the following. Can you guys hear me all right up here?
Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Good. Excellent. The panelists are free to respond in Spanish or in English, whatever they prefer. Marta, given that countries such as Panama are expected to face significant impacts from climate change, what is the current role of buildings in Panama's policy framework in addressing resilience and the whole life cycle approach, taking into account nationally determined commitments, national adaptation plans, regulations, etc.? And the second part of that question, if you can memorize all of that, is recognizing that effective global progress in the sector can only happen through deep intergovernmental collaboration. What impact do you think the buildings breakthrough could have in this regard?
Ok, muchas gracias por la pregunta, por la oportunidad para participar en este panel. La verdad es que estoy súper contenta de poder compartirles desde la visión de
To be
Panamá.
able to share with you from Panama's point of view what we have been able to achieve from sustainable building, because because of the temperatures that we signed, we are very vulnerable, and we are trying to work on the resilience of our buildings, of course, and this, of course, from the design part. And this is why in Panama, for months, we have been working on regulations to precisely through minimum parameters, we can promote the parameters for high performance and topics regarding constructions to guarantee the final consumption for energy in our instance. Let me tell you a little bit. Panama, before 2012, we approved a regulation for air conditioning and ventilations. The first steps, those were the first steps that we took in Panama. And then afterwards, we approved the legislation for rational use. And we have specific parameters for constructions and the role for local governments on this topic. And well, year after year, we have been working, issuing different regulations like the guidelines for sustainable construction. Afterwards, we worked on the implementation of this. Then there is a regulation for sustainable buildings since 2019, and all of these regulations specifically, I am going to adhere. It's mandatory for any new constructions in the national territory. And precisely what we're looking is to guarantee through those minimum parameters. This could be isolations for the roof or shadows, and also basically measures, greatly passive measures, to guarantee the evolution of this, and a single regulation, which is the use of air conditioning in Panama. In Panama, air conditioning is the greatest use of the the highest consumption of electrical energy. So we have to work a lot on this. This is why we undersign all of these passive measures that will guarantee this, that will allow us to reduce the entryways of heat to the area. This is because our demand of electrical energy is focused precisely when the commercial and service sector is working. This is our highest demand that it has surpassed 2,000 megas in these last few months. So additionally to that, I would like to comment that this regulation that at the same time has been updated because recently it has been updated and we've included new mandates. This is a regulation that it's live. It's a regulation that it's incorporating new guidelines to guarantee sustainability for buildings in Panama. This is for waste management. This is electrical chargers located in differentiated in different parking spaces, and also use of water. All of these parameters are mandatory. And I would like to not leave outside that there is that the achievement here for the different entities, for the National Energy Secretariat, and there is something from the public to private sector where we have a permanent committee where we group with the monthly in the public sector as well as the private sector to guarantee the implementation and to guarantee this. So we compose an application tool to report precisely what hasn't entered in this dynamic modeling, to use a tool that has been designed for technical cooperation that I would like to highlight. And also the technical cooperation has a fundamental role in this type of regulations because we have a group of experience and to know and adapt the realities for each country because each country has different conditions regarding temperature, regarding consumer dynamics. And to highlight additionally for this, we have regulations that have a synergy for this regulation because we cannot appoint anything else because they are taken as measures, as volunteer measures, and we are incentivizing its use as solar panels, and we have to inject to the network the areas and the solar water heaters and also regarding cooling gases, we are working to see how we can regulate that, how we can use the cooling gases that have low yielding global warming. So we're working around this and we will incide on this and in this type of verifications because these are part of the things that we're looking for. And lastly, we need to say that we are highly committed at the CDN because almost the 90% of the commitments belong to energy, and it has some of the lines. It has the national strategy for rational and efficient use of energy, where we have a specific topic when the third axis. Well, I'm not going to get into detail because we don't have a lot of time, but thank you for the opportunities, and I am at your service for any consultations you might have.
Thank you very much, Marta. Moving right along, because we have a tight schedule here. Our next question is for Manuel. In case you have a mic, excellent. Manuel, the following is your question. In what ways can low-carbon cement and concrete be a turning point in the transition of Latin America and the Caribbean's building sector? And what measures are being undertaken to make this low-carbon material more available, accessible, and affordable?
Bueno, muchas gracias por la invitación a este
Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. I would like to start with something which is to remember that cement and concrete are essential, not just for the construction of roads and homes, but they are vital for practically all of the agendas of decarbonization that we're discussing. If we want to move to wind energy or solar energy, we need concrete. If we want to replace air travel or vehicles for trains and metros, we need cement. We have Panama. Panama required in 2014 and recently for the expansion of the Panama Canal. But this Panama Canal is saving millions of tons of CO2 in all trips of the world cargo. So that is the first definition. Having this clear, what we need to do as a society is to see how we can provide those materials with the least amount of effect. And we have been working since 1950 in decarbonizing the production and for offering low carbon emissions. And this is the industrial of this for the associations, and this is an agenda to reach carbon neutrality in 2020. In the hand with the Inter-American Federation of Cement, that the representatives were here this morning, we created regional and national roadmaps to be able to mitigate the services for 2030. And at the level of countries such as the Colombian Chamber of Concrete, Prosenco, and we are hoping to reach neutrality for 2050. We are talking for Latin America is not just about producing concrete and low carbon. We need to look at realities. In our case, there are leverages that we need to work on. One of them, to decarbonize, is to be able to substitute fossil fuels for alternate fossils. In our case, we can use residues. In our case, in countries such as Germany and Austria, nowadays are replacing 85 to 70 to 85% of this. And in Latin America is higher. This is something that has to do with public policies. And on the other hand, I could have the cement and the use of lesser carbon footprint. But if we don't use it efficiently, I am losing a great deal of those efforts. And the majority of the countries in Latin America, we have an informal construction and we don't have an agenda for this yet. Finally, to speak about concrete and cements that are low carbons, I need transparency, I need standards, and I need information. There are the initiatives such as the Concrete Sustainability Council that is talking about an initial strategy that is not just an environmental, but topics about the respect to human rights and the prevention of child labor. Why are we talking about this? Because these materials need to have a common framework and need to have decisions that can be adopted in the framework of initiatives where we can see the global ABC, where we can reach and have information to generate public policies that will incentivize the use of these materials that are low carbon.
Muchas gracias, don Manuel.
Thank you very much, Don Manuel.
Pamela, the next question is for you. You have a microphone? Excellent. To speed up, there we go. What steps are needed to speed up the implementation of climate action in the buildings and construction sector at national and local levels? The Colombia GBC supported the development of a national buildings and construction roadmap for Colombia. What would be the value for the Latin American Green Building Councils to collaborate on replicating a similar exercise in all countries of the region?
Gracias, Nicolás, y gracias a todos. Primero quería agradecer el liderazgo
To Nicolas for this. First of all, I wanted to thank the Green Building Council in Chile and in other sessions for the Global ABC and to be a part, so we can be a part of this conversation. And well, right now it's awesome for us to see a conversation for the title. And thank you for what we're saying. The question is, what do we need for a mapping, and so that we could see so that we could check this in the regions, and we could see the information, the data we have, technical information installed in the countries, and we could see the image in each country, and also at a regional level we could see the criterias and that have been well defined. And I believe that what we need in the end is a collaboration and a greater participation, as you mentioned, a collaboration between the public sector, the private sector, to unify the languages so they can have the same conversation in the private sector.
que menciona
Voy al baño, nada más y vengo.
In Colombia, the GBC led an exercise to create a roadmap for decarbonization in the environment in Colombia. And it took them a few months to have this result. And they commented not long ago in the yearly meeting of the GBCs that in Mexico, GBC looked for them to replicate this exercise in a specific city in San Pedro, Garza Garcia, Monterrey, where they wanted to have a roadmap specifically for that city. And in a matter of days and weeks, they were able to replicate what Colombia had already done. So it is an excellent example of how we can have an acceleration through the collaboration and implementation of these good practices. We also need events and activities like these that foster these partnerships and this type of collaboration. Today, in a brief conversation outside, we detected a series of initiatives and projects that we can implement together. So without doubt, that contact and that conversation between people is extremely valuable. An example of this could be a regional project that we could boost through the American Regional Network of the World Green Council. We want to focus on adaptation, resilience. Also in our region, we have detected a few tools that already exist, and also partners like GIZ and Bidinvest that also have prioritized these topics in our region. And also, to share an example, in Guatemala, they are also expecting next month to have a finished tool. It is a specific certification tool for the residential sector, and that includes criteria for mitigation, which is where efforts have been focused on in the past years. Now, this certification tool for households can include criteria for adaptation and resilience. And Colombia also has the housing standard. Brazil also has the Casa Colombia, Casa Brazil, and thanks to Bidinvest, we're going to be able to unify the criteria so that these countries can adopt these assessment criteria for their own certification tools. So I think that we have the platform. We have some methods, we have some ideas, platforms like the Americas Network of the World GBC, which I think could be an excellent partner to accelerate this implementation of practices of this sort at the regional level. So as a conclusion, I think that what we need to do is to have further collaboration to accelerate this implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pamela. Following question goes to Carolina. Carolina, the question is the following. With increasing demands for buildings and with materials set to dominate resource consumption, its associated GHG emissions expected to double by 2060, what measures is BWI taking in the just transition towards zero emissions and resilient buildings? As well, how do you think labor organizations influence and support governments in setting ambitious measures and policies aligned with the priorities of the sector?
Thank you, Nicolas. Well, it's also a pleasure to be here with you today. I am representing the Building and Wood Workers International, BWI, which is a global union, an international trade union confederation, representing 12 million workers from 127 countries, from the building materials, wood, timber, and aligned sectors. Well, addressing the question, well, recognizing the impact of the building industry in the emissions, both energy related as well as the extraction of materials, the BWI has assumed the agenda for climate protection as one of its priorities. So one of the concrete measures is the creation of a global network on building materials and new sustainable materials, which is actually chaired by a Brazilian trade unionist, and we are organizing the first trade union regional conference on new building materials, which will happen in Latin America for the first region. So we are actually, as LAC, at the forefront of this discussion in the trade union movement. We recognize that the transition to bio-based and circular material economies may exacerbate social risks across the supply chain, the value chain, especially in informal economies as we have in the region, where building codes are extremely difficult to enforce. Therefore, it's mandatory for us to anticipate and fund problem areas for a just transition, particularly in conventional higher carbon material sectors such as cement, guaranteeing that brown jobs lost will be compensated by the creation of new green jobs, using the opportunities of the twin digital and green transition to upskill, reskill, and train workers in safer jobs in the construction. So the network is one space that we are using to evaluate these changes, how they will affect workplaces and work organization, and addressing our concerns about the impacts of this transition on employment, remuneration, working time, working tax, qualification requirements, safety and health protection. Evaluating not only the risk but also the chances posed by this transition to a net zero or low carbon building industry. So of course the working people they have this common concern. Will their jobs as it is stand the test of the transition? If not, what steps are needed to ensure that it does? If done properly, through dialogue and negotiation, including trade unions in the planning, between employers and unions with the necessary support from governments, this opens the door to realizing that just transition and taking on the existential task that is before us, that it's well done and it can be socially and environmentally sustainable. So we don't want to react, we also want to anticipate and participate on the planning, sitting on the table. We are already discussing this with some transnational companies. The petrochemical company Braskem is one of the companies that has already joined the discussion, but I wanted to briefly share with you one concrete initiative from one trade union in the region from Argentina. UOLRA, the Unión Obrera Ladrillera de la República Argentina, they are a brick makers union, and they have put in place a strategy to eliminate coal as fuel for kilns in the brick manufacturing, facing both the challenges of the transition towards net zero carbon emission in the building industry, as well as addressing occupational health and safety. So this is a sector that is highly informal. It uses migration work, mostly from Bolivia. We have child labor, we have several issues there, and the trade union is leading a process to, at the same time, lead the energy transition as well as guarantee formal, decent jobs, eliminating child labor. So this is what we call as the transition to green jobs, safe jobs, and union jobs. So I would like to invite all of you to consider including trade unions in the dialogue. The concept of just transition is actually a union idea. It emerged first in the 80s. As an union idea, and today we see many tables even here about just transition without including trade unions. So we are also part of the Building Breakthrough Initiative and would like to have a more prominent role in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to our final panelist, Liliana Campos. You have a mic? Yes. Question for you, Liliana, is the Breakthrough Agenda report highlighted 5 priority areas the sector needs to tackle this coming year or two, one of which being finance and investment. What is the situation in the Latin American and Caribbean region in this area, and what can help unlock climate finance in the sector?
Ya, muchísimas gracias y qué gusto de verlos a todos y a todas aquí en
The question is, what has been done in the region regarding financing that has already been detected as one of the main tools to trigger the decarbonization of the building sector? Throughout this whole week, we have been listening from the Development Bank, the finance ministries, etc., the development of the sustainable finances in different countries. Colombia in our region was a pioneer. Mexico has just published theirs in March of this year. Panama is working on theirs. And who else? Tell me. Central America, Colombia, I've already mentioned. Yes, so this is something that is happening right now in the region. What are the taxonomies good for or useful regarding the building sector is to take this greenwashing ambiguity away. What is a sustainable building? What is not? For Panama, maybe it could be a very efficient air conditioner with cooling agents of low environmental global warming, but maybe in other areas something could be regional and the works that are associated to this are aligned to a just transition. And maybe for Colombia the issue is more on having a monitoring tool, and the truth of the matter is that it is all of this together. To move finances, first we need to define metrics and parameters and what we call science-based targets. And the building sector, especially on the operational side, it is very easy. We already have the tools to be able to measure when a technology, a material, or an architectural design reduces the demands for cooling, heating, and energy consumption in general in our buildings. So the issue here is to do it in our region, which is very vast regarding climate zones. So to group it as per climatic zones. From the German technical agency, we had the opportunity of leading the group for building and the development of the taxonomy in Mexico. I was the main advisor for this, and we grouped all of the sectors, and the Green Building Council in Mexico was an important party, and in fact all of the professionals that work on certifications. What we did was that we conducted a technical assessment to have a type approval of the certifications and to compare them, as well as the performance of the different buildings. Some certifications demand primary energy, others final energy, and so there are different calculation methods and metrics to measure. So if you consult the Mexican taxonomy, you will realize that those goals that have to be met for the building sector, which will channel finances towards buildings, are already through a homologation process or type approval process. What we need to do is have financial and non-financial incentives approach so that the sector can have access to the decarbonization benefits, or the benefits that come from the decarbonization approaches. Many countries have done this. For example, in Colombia, there is the CASA part. In Mexico, we had the Eco Casa, Eco House, which is a financing system with a preferential rate. If your household of new construction proves that there is an emission reduction through a tool that measures the architectonic design, materials, and appliances and everything that goes inside the house. So it is measured, it is validated through an ex-ante assessment about your house performance, and then you have access to finances with a preferential rate. That's already an indicator, and all of the countries in the region are advancing towards that direction. Other tools that can be developed from taxonomy include bonuses, warranty funds, financing that are specific for constructions. In the previous panel, there were development banks, and CAF was mentioning how complex it was to finance cities. But the building sector has the advantage that it can have financing with a group of buildings. So we have the hotel management system, and we can group a pipeline with a monitoring tool where we don't only have the traceability of the financial resources, but also we can observe the performance of the building ex post, which is after the construction. So for this, international partnership, such as the international cooperation, is a key element to develop these capacities. So from the German Technical Cooperation, together with the French Development Agency, developed the program for efficiency in buildings, the PEEP, the energy efficiency program that is now called PEEP Cool, that is focused specifically on buildings that are with high cooling demands in our region, and it is tied in with a financing branch where the technical part tells you how you have to go about to reduce the energy consumption, and the financial branch gives you the support with preferential rates so that you can actually carry those out. So that is what I can bring to the table, Nicolas, that we're doing in the region with international cooperation and partnerships.
Muchas gracias, Liliana. Teníamos la
We had the intention,
un poquitillo, entonces antes de que nos echen y nos apaguen las luces, más bien.
and thank you very much. And please don't hold on to the questions or concerns, and write all of the organizers of the events. And I am committed to ask all the questions, to promote any of the questions. But please don't stay. Don't keep the questions. Just to close the sessions, we have some closing remarks from Yves Laurent Sapoval. He is the Senior Advisor for the Ministry of Ecological Transition and Territorial Cohesion in
Don Yves
France.
nos acompaña en línea, ya que no nos pudo acompañar en persona. Ahí lo tenemos. Good afternoon, Yves. Welcome. Nice to have you here with us.
with all the people around the table here, the World GBC first, and many financial institutions, any stakeholder of the value chain of building was present, and we are still continuing working together, issuing this building. And obviously, the people around the table, you are all able to mobilize governments from South America. And I just want to be I'm very serious here. I'm very surprised that within those, with all those goodwills and all these people doing many things in terms of green buildings, I'm just wondering why we don't have any governments from South America in our buildings breakthrough by now. We still have 1 month to gather more governments. So really my call here is to tell you that being given the magnitude of the question of buildings, being given the number of stakeholders involved, being given all the goodwill of succeeding, being given the fact that we really are winning this battle now, we really are mobilizing more than we ever did mobilize on this question of buildings at COP. We now have, thanks to all the partners around the table, we now have a buildings pavilion at COP, and we really make the case for buildings. So my call is help us to help you. We all together, we can win this race. Every building that is built now and that is not a green building has a terrible lock-in effect for decades. We need to act urgently, and we will act better if we act together. So really help us to help you. Come and join the global forum that we are going to organize in Paris with all the stakeholders in March 2024. This will be the first time at this scale that ministers in charge of construction will be gathered, also with all stakeholders around the table. So this would be my word of conclusion. Help us to help you, help us to mobilize governments on the way to COP 28, so that we can really have a breakthrough that is a breakthrough. Thank you.
Valuable perspectives. And with that, we close our session. Thank you very much for accompanying us. Have a good day. Quédense para sacarles un selfie antes que se vayan.